Welcome to another episode of Behind the Veil, where we delve deep into the realms of high strangeness and exploring phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality. I'm your host, Mike Hughes.
And I'm your co-host, Christian Julian.
Today, we had the pleasure of having Mike Ricksecker joining us. Mike is a well-known researcher, Amazon best-selling author, and a prominent figure in the paranormal realm. Mike's journey includes appearances on shows like Ancient Aliens, The Alaska Triangle, and a variety of well-known TV series. As the producer of the Shadow Dimensions docuseries and host of the Edge of the Rabbit Hole livestream, Mike delves into ancient wisdom, lost civilizations, and the supernatural. Join us as we go behind the veil with Mike Ricksecker. Mike, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, welcome.
Mike and Christian, thank you so much for having me. I'm
no
really
problem.
happy to be here tonight.
Absolutely. Well, we got a lot to unpack here, including diving into your new book. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Travels through time, inside the fourth dimension, time travel, and stacked time theory. That is quite a title, my friend.
A little lengthy.
That's okay. And also, I've been completely intrigued with your research concerning shadow entities in the paranormal realm, a topic I unfortunately have a deep personal disturbing connection with. But however, let's start off with your explorations in Egypt, of all places, and the intriguing discoveries that you've made in the realm regarding potential ancient Stargate technology.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have another tour, Stargates of Ancient Egypt, tour number 2, coming up this April 16th to the 28th. So if anybody wants to jump on that, we still have some open slots.
Sign up.
Yeah, sign up now. It's a really fascinating topic, is when you actually go to Egypt and you're looking and exploring these temples.
Yeah,
you see the symbolism right there in front of you that spells out Stargate, and the word is actually Saba. And the gentleman that I work with on those tours, Mohammed Ibrahim, that's actually the name of his tour company. So he's Stargate Tours, essentially. But we see these are like Abydos, Dendera, Karnak, an assortment of other temples. And you see these really flanking the doorways to these different rooms. And some of those setups, like the way Hatshepsut's mortuary temple is constructed, the way that you had the symbolism of energy going straight back up into the temple. And this temple is set into a cliff. You have the base of an ancient pyramid. I mean, the pyramid's long since gone, but the base of it is still there off to the side. And if you believe in, that pyramids were harnessing the energy of the earth, this would have been the thing that was powering the Stargate. And you see that symbolism all the way back into the Holy of Holies, which they don't let you in there unless you get up there at a time when nobody else is there and you grease the palms of the guards, which does happen.
Yeah.
And then you can see what's beyond there. And it's, there's this cartouche full of stars back there. That's, really a one of those immaculate iconographies for Stargate.
Yeah, I heard it was pretty life-changing to be able to go out there and actually witness that stuff firsthand. But really, let's talk about what makes you think that they were capable of having Stargates. Kind of let's dive into the nitty-gritty. And how did Egypt really get on your radar? And how did you specifically start diving into what was potentially ancient technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Egypt has been on my radar ever since the early 90s, when you had Mysteries of the Sphinx documentary special come out, hosted by Charlton Heston. It was John Anthony West and Robert Schoch, and they were, unveiling their research that redated the Sphinx. And then right after that, you had the movie Stargate come out.
Yeah.
So it was
Great
kind
show.
of those two things. Absolutely. And I got into the show, years later, but those two things back to back, that research and that movie just really, really piqued my interest. And I was already involved with paranormal, supernatural, and already had some experiences there. So this was kind of like one of those other areas of interest that truly just fascinated me. And throughout my journey, I'm investigating the paranormal, I'm studying different phenomena, and then I'm looking over here at Egypt as well. So I start to see some parallels between the two. And so, I have this, website It's a community called Connected Universe Portal, and my what I like to talk about is how everything is connected, and so we see how that ancient technology that Egypt had, and the different um, whether it's the gods that they were worshiping, whether it was, okay, we have the Stargate symbolism, the ties back to Atlantis. We see those connections throughout our world and throughout the universe as well.
Don't you? I mean, wouldn't you think that? I mean, I'm a fan of Egypt and especially the pyramids and all the lore that goes back there. But there's so many questions about Egypt. Whether did people actually build the pyramids? What are your thoughts on? And a lot of times, also, we're finding out that they may be a lot older than what
Yeah.
we're being told. I tend to believe, and from what I've heard from people out there, is that a lot of researchers, and we're talking about Egyptian researchers, believe that there is information that they're not talking about.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Regarding the history, regarding who was out there, how these things were built. And I feel like this big secret of what's going on is not so much of a conspiracy, so to speak. I mean, I believe it is to a degree, but I think that it challenges everything that we know about human history. And I think that a lot of researchers and people who are delving into that, I think they want to kind of turn a blind eye to that, and I think they're trying to figure out a sensible direction to take. Who created the pyramids? What is actually all this? The history behind it. It seems like they're just more comfortable trying to focus on that narrative when a lot of people on the inside say we know a lot more. Everything that we know about it is wrong, at least what the public is hearing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. It's, I mean, yeah, there's a lot that goes into this. So, with different researchers, many of them are funded by a university. If they go too far off the narrative, they'll get their funding pulled.
Yeah.
You have others who, it's been their, research for 40, 50 years, sometimes longer. And, they don't want to turn their back on, well, this is what I've been
I
talking
agree.
about, for my entire life. How can I just change that now? Others are like, well, I've written all these books, well, okay. To me, it's like, write a new book,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but, people just, they kind of, it's interesting, because that these people got into this area of research because they had a passion for it and they wanted to learn more about these mysteries and maybe even discover something for themselves. But there's a point in their life where it, there's like this hill that they climb, and then that's it. That's the only place that they're going to go because they don't want to turn back on all that. So they go
Right.
from that person that was intrigued and wanted to discover all the mysteries to being that stalwart and like, no, this is it. Like keeping that staunch stance on whatever the particular topic may be. But yeah, it's wonderful now that we have so many people that are asking the questions, and you see all the time some of the bigger researchers in this field, like Graham Hancock, taking so much flack
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For his research. And
What a pioneer, by the way.
oh
What a
yeah,
pioneer.
absolutely. I love Graham's work, and you know okay, it had Ancient Apocalypse come out, which, a lot of that stuff, if you read Fingerprints of the Gods, Magicians of the Gods, all that, you've already, America before, you've already are familiar with these stories. But it was a wonderful presentation that was put together and really gave more of a mainstream audience a taste of that. And one of those pieces, Gudin Padang, you know, the geologist there had published that paper there a couple of months ago talking about the ancient pyramid that was there, worked by human hands. It dates back about 25,000 years. Now, this is a geologist. This is his specialty. This is his
Yeah.
area of study.
Yeah.
And you
Mhm.
have the archaeologist saying, well, no. Human beings weren't, creating buildings, like that, couldn't have been human. And one of them, that was actually an Indonesian archaeologist, had said, well, you go back, 11, 12,000 years, they weren't making construction like that. Well, okay, there's a big jump between 25,000 and 11,000 years ago. So it could stand to reason that something happened.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
lost the technology. Maybe there was, we would talk about the cataclysm, but maybe there are other things that happened. Could have been a famine, or something else that occurred, that they lost that knowledge. They lost that particular civilization. That is a long time. So it boggles my mind how the archaeologists, the more traditional archaeologists, because there are archaeologists that will actually side on the side
Yeah.
of Graham and some of the others, but the more traditionalists, it's they're arguing with somebody whose this is their specialty. A geologist, they can look at a rock and tell you whether it was worked by human hands or if it was natural. And we have the archaeologist who's really kind of more of a bookworm, and they sure they get in the ground and they're looking at artifacts and that sort of thing, but their specialty isn't looking at rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you yourself had any like difficulties with your like expeditions, or like been confronted at all with your studies?
Um, I mean, I'll get a lot of flack on social media and that sort of thing, and I'm in so many different areas. When it comes to the Stargates, sure, I'll have people comment on a post that it's BS, it's sci-fi, it was television show, movie, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They'll immediately jump to that I'm talking about aliens and extraterrestrials, and it's not immediately that. Or you mentioned it earlier with the shadow people and that sort of thing. I'll have people jump on me that I'm playing with demons and stuff like that. So I get it from all different angles.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
people would argue about rocks posted on social media. If you post a
Yeah.
picture of a rock, it's just the way it is.
Right.
I feel like the more flack you're getting, the more, I guess, better work you're doing, to be honest with you. So what do you think regarding the pyramids? What do you think that the pyramids themselves were technology, and what do you think that their purpose was?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question. What was the actual purpose?
Yeah.
I do believe that they were some sort of machine. Now, Christopher Dunn, of course, has the Giza power plant theory, and I'm not discrediting that at all. I
Right.
just
I've
don't
heard
know if
that.
it was specifically a power plant, but I believe it was some sort of machine. And for me, the smoking gun with the Great Pyramid of Giza, a lot of people talk about the coffer that's there in the King's Chamber, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. To me, the smoking gun is actually in the Queen's Chamber. When you go down in there, there's this
So
niche.
what is the coffer you're talking about?
It's the coffer is it's not a sarcophagus, but basically it's a box that's there in the King's Chamber.
Oh, the
And
holding the remains.
well, it doesn't. It never. Nobody ever found remains there. That's the controversy.
Oh,
Is the
okay.
traditionalists say, well, that's where they kept the remains of the pharaoh. Well, no remains were ever found there. So
Yeah, I
you
mean,
know,
I still thought they were tombs for like the longest time
Yeah.
until recently, and I was like, "Wait a minute, what?" Like,
here's the thing: like there are smaller, like really small pyramids around the area that
yeah,
were actual tombs, but the bigger ones, no. So it's one of those deals where the dynastic Egyptians are looking at these massive pyramids and they're like, "Whoa, that's awesome! I want that." As my headstone sort of
yeah,
thing, kind of like
Yeah.
what we do in the graveyards. If someone has the
Right.
money, and I've seen some really amazing things in more modern times. We're doing laser etchings and things like that
Yeah.
on headstones. So it's that same sort of concept. We want to put something that to us is majestic or memorable. So
I mean, it's
some
on
of
our
the
dollar bill. Just the imagery of the
yeah,
pyramid itself is
Yeah.
all over the place.
exactly. So, but where I was going with this was in the Queen's Chamber. When you go inside, there's this niche on the one wall, and it's a little corbelled niche. It's kind of almost like a very, very miniature version of the Grand Gallery, which is huge, tall, massive, and very long. This is much smaller, and we see this design in some of the other pyramids as well. So traditional archaeologists say, well, we believe that there was, maybe an idol or a statue that was held here, for ceremonial purposes or to watch over the maybe like a Ka statue or something like that, which the idea behind that is, the soul could inhabit the statue and walk around the tomb. And you do see that in some of the actual tombs themselves.
Yeah.
The problem with this thing is with that idea is when you actually look at the back wall of this niche. For one thing, there's a tunnel that leads out from there. It goes back about 30 meters and then kind of dead ends, at least as far as we know for right now. But the actual wall itself is charred. It's blackened. There's scorch marks there. And the stone itself is vitrified, it's been melted. So something extremely, extremely hot was activated or doing something in that niche. It wasn't some statue or whatever. So yeah, and there are actual salt deposits and things like that are on the walls of that chamber that aren't elsewhere throughout the pyramid. So something was seriously happening within that chamber, and it was not some sort of a tomb or whatever.
Yeah, and you don't think that it could have been like just a fire they placed there, like a man-made thing? I mean,
No,
to
because
melt that rock-
like a torch, like a torch is not going to melt the rock.
yeah, I mean, you're talking about extreme heat. Like
Right.
you've been through there. Like what does it feel like walking through these? Do you feel like anything when you're going through it?
There's definitely an energy about it. It's a little stuffy in there, of course. But yeah, I've been all throughout it. When we do the tours, our group gets 2 hours just to ourselves, our little group, throughout the pyramid. The whole thing's opened up to us. So
That's so cool.
Yeah, if you go there as just like a regular daytime, somebody from the public, your ticket will get you the grand gallery up to the king's chamber and then back down, and that's it. But we get the whole thing to ourselves, 2 hours, our group, and everything's open to us. So I've been down there into the subterranean chamber, and the queen's chamber is usually an off limits one. But yeah, there's a palpable energy about the place. You can seriously feel it while you're in there. And part of it might be, sure, like, oh my gosh, I'm inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. But I've been in there a couple times now, and it's still, there's something about it for sure.
Yeah. And I know this would be pure speculation, but I mean, who do you think created the pyramids? Are we talking about an ancient culture that was technologically advanced that vanished at some point in time, or do you think it was extraterrestrial? I mean, obviously there was technology there. I believe that, but someone had to create that technology. So the real question is, who created that technology?
Yeah, I believe it was a pre-Diluvian civilization. Probably the civilization that we typically call Atlantis.
Yeah.
And we see those records at, aside from Plato's account, we do see records of that at Edfu, the creation texts that are there. And then, the cataclysm is right there on the walls of Edfu. And it talks about the primeval ones that came from, the island that was decimated by fire and water and then settled in Egypt. So that story is actually there. So I believe it was those peoples that came to Egypt and built those pyramids. They had the technology to be able to do that. And the Egyptians that are there, many of them talk about, no, we found these.
Yeah.
We repurposed these. And when you look at the pyramids, there are no hieroglyphs there. This was not, you look at dynastic construction, and it's like every single bit of wall space it could find. It's beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
These beautiful friezes, the hieroglyphs, every single inch of wall space it could find, they decorated. But the pyramids, what's supposed to be the most majestic thing that they've constructed, that's supposed to be a tomb. And you look at other tombs, you go to the Valley of the Kings. Oh my gosh, those tombs are beautiful, especially Ramses VI. But the pyramids, nothing. It wasn't the dynastic.
Yeah, that's pretty odd.
Yeah, and you hear that story all over the globe, especially with ancient sites, especially in Central America, where they basically said, we found this, and I'm not a a super diehard knowledgeable person on technical aspects of areas, but I've watched stuff like Ancient Aliens. I do a lot of homework on a lot of these ancient sites, and I know there's places in Central America where they give that story where they say that, hey,
Mhm.
we found these structures, and you can actually see when they started building onto these structures, they can tell what was the culture that came in that
Yeah.
added to it, building on, because the way that it was built is completely different than what man at that time was building onto it. Do you do you follow ancient sites, especially like in Central America and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, you kinda have to, and
Right.
yeah, when you look at, like, Sexy Woman and, some of these other places that yeah, the more complicated construction is at the bottom, and you
Yeah.
can like you said, you can see the different levels, and yeah, the native peoples of the area say, "No, no, no, these are not, you know, Incan or, whichever one it is, Mayan, etcetera."
Right.
Um, this this was before we came along. We found these, and traditional archaeologists don't want to hear that because it does not fit their narrative. But
Exactly.
yeah, the locals know.
Especially what was the one site? I forget the name of it. I think it may be in Peru, maybe in somewhere in that area, but
Machu
it's
Picchu?
It's where you can see the
Oh,
walls where you can't even fit like a piece of paper into the wall. Like it's these giant mega blocks.
Yeah, the big
Um,
H blocks. Yeah,
yeah, and it looks like they were just melted together or cut with a laser. And when you look at that, you're like, there is no way in hell a human being, or at least ancient man that we know of, there's no way they could have created that. I mean, these rocks are so perfectly fused together and so perfectly cut. I mean, it boggles my mind that researchers have. I mean, I know it puzzles them. I know when they look at it, they go,
yeah,
something doesn't make sense out of that. But they never stray off path as far as like, oh well, we had to man made these.
yeah. It was stone or copper tools, is what they say. It's
Yeah,
like, and some of these are, you know, uh, like granite or dolomite or some of these really really hard something you can't
yeah,
especially something that fine you you can't create that with stone or copper tools and what have you. And you take somebody there, a modern engineer to look at it. Okay, how would you actually cut this? And especially like those H boxes, really, really fine, lines there, or some of these statues in Egypt. And they would say, well, laser, but you don't see the vitrification from the
right.
heat of the laser there. So it wasn't laser. So it makes you wonder, okay, how did they do this? And I had one for my dad. Was a tool and die maker by trade. He was a machinist, but really doesn't know a lot about ancient Egyptian history. But I threw one at him when I came back from Egypt the first time. The museum there in Cairo. It's right there in plain sight. You can go take a look at it. It's a room that has a bunch of different sarcophagi, and there's this one that they have there that's on its side and it's kind of pushed against one of the back walls, but you can make your way around and find it back there.
yeah.
And what they would do, and you can see it plain as day back there, is for the lid of the sarcophagus, is they would cut that lid right off the back side so that you would have, the lid, it was a part of the original rock, the original stone, to keep the same energy throughout it. But when you look at this line and it like stopped and the lid, the back of the lid broke off of it, but you can see as you just take a flashlight and you look down there and you can see from the top and from the bottom, there were two circular saws that were cutting this thing. Now, this is granite. So, one, traditional archaeologists will say that, ancient Egyptians did not have circular saws. Okay, but I can actually see the circular cut right here
Yeah.
when I shine my flashlight down there. And two, this is granite. So I throw this at my dad. Hey, Dad, um, what do you think cut this? And obviously he sees a circular pattern. Well, okay, circular saw. And he's like, that's granite, right? Yeah. It's like, you need like a diamond tip blade for that. Yeah, and so that's our, our
Yeah.
modern context of what we're looking
Yeah.
at here. And our modern society would use diamond tip circular saws to make that sort of cut. And that is, the ancient Egyptians were not supposed to have anything close to that type of technology. It was like
Right.
stone and copper tools. So no, they had something going on.
Yeah. So you obviously you do these tours in Egypt. What is it that people get to? What do you just kind of verbally paint the picture for me of what your tours are like, and what is it that people experience on these tours?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I kind of already explained about the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
That's a real highlight there. We do visit some of the other pyramids, like the Bent Pyramid, which to me was a harmonic acoustical machine. Just with all the and I'll go through and explain that when everybody's there. But it has a lot of those corbelled structures within it. Of course, we go to Saqqara. We check out the step pyramid there, and depending on it kind of depends on the day of the week and access to some areas. But our tour guide Mohammed Ibrahim, he's he grew up in that area. He is a Egyptologist. He's worked with the different locations there for decades, and so there's certain areas that we'll kind of get special access to. So some of those are at Saqqara. Some of those are we'll go down to like Luxor, the Aswan area, all that. Some of those different temples down there, we'll get special access to some of the different rooms. So like Abydos, Dendara, of course Luxor and Karnak, Hatshepsut's temple. And you're getting insight from. Sure, I'm going to present my findings and what have you, but Mohammed is extremely intelligent, knowledgeable. Again, he's local there. He's been studying this material for decades. He actually studied under Zahi Hawass, and so he's got that traditional background,
Right.
but because he's been there for so long, and he's talked with everybody there, and he's put his own mind to what he's looking at and connecting it to other aspects of world history. He's like, no, this is not what the traditionalists
Yeah.
are telling us here.
That's
So
what I was.
so you get that real insight.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting ready to ask you. Is like, what
Mhm.
are they saying to your ear? I mean, obviously we know what the mainstream narrative is,
Right.
but like when you talk to people like him, what are they saying to you?
Yeah. So okay, so, I mean, Stargates, obviously that's kind of a big thing within the tour, but the fact that the so many of these structures were not built by the dynastics. They were built by the pre-Diluvian Egyptians. So the culture that was there beforehand, before we lost everything to time. There's all kinds of there's so many things that are hidden in plain sight just from the
Oh,
simple.
yeah.
Okay, going to the Nubian Museum, and you would never you'd walk by and like, okay, that's an interesting artifact. It's an ostrich egg. Okay. And there's a lot of different things like this there. But you're looking, oh, it's an ostrich egg, and there's designs painted on it. Yeah, except what you're looking at, and it's on either side of this one particular ostrich egg that's 8,000 years old. The three pyramids in the Nile River is right there. You're looking
Yeah.
right at it. The traditionalists are like, "Oh, those are mountains." There aren't mountains like that in Egypt. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the way that the height of those three structures are on that and that ostrich eggs, they're perfect. The
Yeah.
Great Pyramid second, and then the smaller one. So we're looking at an eight, and you can carbon date obviously an ostrich egg. It's an organic, and that dates 8,000 years, and we're looking at a picture of the pyramids. So yeah, that tells us right there the pyramids were older. So there's a lot of clues like that are in
It's
plain sight
wild.
that have not been hidden, but there's so much else that has been hidden.
And
Do all
obviously,
oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Christian. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, do all these sites contain a Stargate that you
Not
mentioned?
all of them, not all
Okay.
of them, but several do. Yeah.
What are some of the characteristics of like the actual Stargate itself? Like, is it just the whole building, or is there like a specific room, or like
It's
a
Yeah, there are different. Yeah, there are different rooms within that would be like the Stargate rooms. But as you pass through some of the different like gateways and courtyards back into the building where those rooms are, they'll let you know that these are basically you're taking the path to the Stargate, and so
Yeah.
there's specific hieroglyphs. Again, Saba is what we call it, but basically it's the folded sheet, which is the S. The B is the foot, SB, and then ancient Egyptians didn't have vowels, so we kind of put those in there. And we have the Coptic that kind of helps us with that. But then you have the determinatives that are a part of that, which is one determinative is the gate, and the other determinative is a star. So
Yeah.
it's just you're looking right at it. But then there are other ones where you have the gate with the star above it, and some other representations of that.
So there are a little bit of like differences between each gate.
Yeah.
And what do you think like the purpose of these gates were? Like what were
That's
they being?
I was gonna be like, what is a Stargate? When you say it, I mean, you see the show where people are walking
Right.
through
Yeah.
it. It's a portal. But what do you really think these? I mean, what is a Stargate?
Yeah, and that's kind of the more traditional view of what they are, and it could be, maybe they were using these things to go to other places within the cosmos. Some of these beings that they say that they've interacted with, right there on the walls in front of you. So maybe they were meeting with these different beings from other places in the cosmos. They could have been using them to move to other places on the globe. You see similarities between like the Step Pyramid and Chichen Itza and some of these other structures around the world. And actually, they're on Elephantine Island, in the one temple that's still standing there. You actually see this one individual that's wearing what looks like a Mayan headdress. And there's a Stargate that's up on the hill there. So it's like, okay, is this a potential Stargate that they were using to go to South America? That's a possibility. Or, it could have been, entering into an altered state of consciousness, or even moving through, it could be moving through time as well.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Because you see there, they have the depictions there of, white. It's white cakes essentially is what they are presenting. But when you go through the text, they're talking about this white powdery substance that a lot of people believe was monatomic white gold. And monatomic white gold has really, really fascinating properties when you do things like heat it and all these other things to it. So if one were to ingest that, it would kind of temporarily change some of your chemical makeup within your body. So was this like almost their version of ayahuasca, or was it something even more advanced to prepare their body to move through another place in the cosmos? We really don't quite know. And I know that there's a lot of places like online right now that you can go, and they say that they have monatomic white gold, and you can buy that. I'm kind of skeptical about that. I mean, the process for creating that was patented back in the 1980s by David Hudson, and he kind of accidentally came across that on his ranch there. He was testing some of the different chemical compounds there on his ranch, and accidentally found monatomic white gold. So how others are trying to create that when he had the patent, I'm not really sure if what people are selling as monatomic white gold online is really the real thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously pyramid structures all over the globe. Do you think a lot of these pyramid structures are related? Because you have cultures that have no connection to one another, so at least that we knew of.
Right.
But yet you find pyramids all over the globe. You find pyramids in Europe. You find pyramids in Central and South America. I think do we have any pyramids in the United States that we are mounds? That
we do. Yeah. Cahokia Mound in Illinois is considered the largest pyramid north of Mesoamerica. Yeah.
And then allegedly there is pyramids in the Antarctic. We've yet to see that, but there's some interesting pictures that seem to depict some pyramids. I know there was that Buzz Aldrin apparently went to one of these pyramids, just complete conspiracy at this point in time, and saw something really bizarre in there, frightening. And put out this cryptic tweet and then deleted it. I think he put out a tweet saying we saw the face of evil and then deleted it like shortly after. But anyways,
Yeah.
do you think that these pyramidal structures all over the globe have some type of relation, or do they have the same builders?
Well, I don't know if necessarily the same builders because some of these are many thousands of years apart. Like if Gunung Padang is 25,000 years old, that might predate something that's in South America, but they could have. So you'd asked before about aliens created. I
Yeah,
don't think aliens created the different pyramids, but I believe they could have, if extraterrestrials had come down during that time, they could have imparted that knowledge,
yeah,
at least building knowledge of different building methods. But I believe was a very intelligent ancient civilization that there was communications across the globe, and they very well could have passed along that knowledge and information to each other, or you have one civilization that uh, you know they ferry across the ocean. They see these massive structures, talk to the engineers that, how did you
yeah.
guys do this?
Something
And
they're
then
just emulating, copying.
yeah.
Um,
Do you feel like that a pyramid is a telltale sign of a Stargate? Like, or should I say, does a Stargate have to have a pyramid to function? Do you?
It doesn't. I mean, I use that example of Hatchet's Simple because it's a really, really nice setup. And if pyramids are used to harness earth energy, which there was a paper that came out here a few years ago that did confirm that, yes, we are detecting that the Great Pyramid of Giza does harness energy.
Mm,
It's again, that's a nice setup there.
yeah.
Yeah, but some of these others, like Abydos, for example, there's not a pyramid there by Abydos, but you have behind Abydos another very ancient structure in the Osirian, and then even further behind that is there's a cave with a pool of water that's supposed to be uh, very, how do I want to say? It has a lot of those esoteric, ancient qualities about it. That's
Yeah.
kind of very, very sacred to the ancient Egyptians. And this is supposed to be the location where the head of Osiris was supposed to be buried and things like that. So this is a very, very sacred area, very energetic area that they were trying to harness that energy, and we're using a Stargate there to some degree. So it doesn't necessarily need a pyramid there, but
Okay.
what I think when we talk about the pyramids harnessing energy, and there's also a lot of ideas there about the obelisks were almost acting as repeaters. That uh, the the larger pyramids were harnessing that energy, and
Hmm.
then of course broadcasting that, and then the obelisks were used as repeaters to kind of send it along. It's an interesting idea, and I'm on board with it to some degree. I don't necessarily believe that they were had street lights and were using electric energy like we use it today.
yeah,
Sure.
I think it was twofold. One, okay, I already talked about feeling the energy while you're inside the pyramid. So I think that those type of structures help to raise like the personal energy of humans while you're near there. So something to, of course, uplift the people of the land. But the most important thing to the ancient Egyptians was the inundation of the Nile River, which happened during the summer, so that they could grow their crops. You're talking about an area that's mostly desert. The Nile River is their source of life. There's, what is it? Something like 93% of the land there is desert, and then the 7% around the Nile that's where people live. So this was a very, very important time of year for them. So anything that they could do to increase the yield of their crops is a major boon for them. So I think that one of the things that the pyramids were doing as far as increasing the energy of the land was helping to make the crops more bountiful so that they could live and sustain their lives there in this
okay,
desert area. Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's been super fascinating stuff about the pyramids and your work there. But let's pivot a little bit and dive into some of the paranormal stuff. You've written a
Mhm.
variety of books on the paranormal. Let's just get into it. I mean, what got you into what created your paranormal fascination?
Yeah. I mean, I'm an experiencer. I've had several experiences dating back to when I was a kid. First significant one was a shadow person experience I had when I was about 8 years old. Um, it was really a one-off incident. I'll just kind of describe it here real quick. Woke up in the middle of the night. And there's a tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my bedroom, and I had I'm 8 years old. I have no idea about shadow people, shadow entities, anything like that at the time. I
Yeah.
just thought there was an intruder in the house and was there to either rob the place or kill me.
Yeah.
That's where your mind goes as an 8-year old. You've watched enough TV or movies or whatever to figure you have enough time to gasp and you're done.
Yeah.
Um, but fortunately, I'm still alive to tell the tale. It did get physical with me though, in a very strange way. So it approached my bed, leaned over. I'm staring into this blank black face. I'm trying to scream. My mouth opens up, nothing comes out. And then it grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my arms across my body, and ran off down the hall. By that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off screaming in my parents' bedroom and, trying to calm me down, console me, trying to tell me I just had a bad dream. But, I knew I'd been awake for
Yeah.
this whole thing. It was a very, frightening experience. So fast forward 5 years, we moved from that house, and I would never consider that house to be haunted. It was just a one-off incident. It wasn't anything else that really happened there.
Interesting.
Just yeah. Well, I've looked into this whole thing much more over the years, but next place we had moved into, there's more going on at this particular place. And it started really right away, and it was another shadow entity, very, very different than the first one that I had seen. The other one was very, very solid. Of course, it got physical and approached me, all that sort of thing. This one would just, I'm in my bedroom, unpacking boxes, putting things away, and it would just come up to the doorway, look in, and I'd turn and I'd look at it, and it would go running off towards my parents' bedroom. And it was like translucent. It wasn't solid like the other ones. So it's different.
Hmm.
It's more skittish or whatever. And this happened like several times over the first few days that we were there. And I decided to ask my mother about it. And I don't know, she thought I was a little bit more mature as a 13-year-old than I had been as an 8-year-old. Um, however mature you could be as a teenager. But she confided in me that she had seen this thing too. Oh,
Wow.
okay. This is great. I'm not crazy. Mom has seen it too.
Yeah.
But she said it in such a disarming fashion that it was like, mom isn't worried about it.
Yeah.
She's
She's
just
cool with this.
yeah, she's cool with it. She's accepting that it's there. So that was really helpful for me. Okay, I'm not crazy. I have nothing to worry about. So I got playful with the thing. And I started calling him Tom, like peeping Tom, because he'd peep in my room and I'd be like, hi, Tom. And
Yeah.
off he'd go. And so that activity lasted in that house for about 3 or 4 months and it just kind of subsided. So I just chalked it up to something was there in the house, checking out the new family moving in, deemed that we were okay, and went about its business. So, two very, very different experiences that I had there as a kid. And that's, two of the more profound things that kind of set me on the path of researching the paranormal and supernatural.
Yeah. And
Wow.
as I'm sitting here listening to you, I was just kind of smiling at because you were literally taking pages right out of my own life.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here because I've been super fascinated. In my younger days, I was super interested in ghosts. I watched all the ghost shows. I was super intrigued until I actually had paranormal encounters. And ever since then, I've completely left the paranormal,
Mm.
spiritual realm alone because it's frightened me so much. I mean, you give me aliens, give me Bigfoot, give me anything of high strangeness. I'm down all about it. But the paranormal stuff really, really bothers me. Um, so yeah, as I was saying, I mean, a lot of this stuff has happened to me as well, and I wouldn't mind sharing a few stories
Yeah.
with you,
Go ahead.
just to correlate with what you were talking about. Is because I never had like any real paranormal things happened to me for most of my life. This was kind of a one-off kind of incident. It did follow me for a couple of years. I don't know if I'll really get into that, but it all started originally. I was married at the time. My wife and I were living in this apartment, and occasionally I would get in the corner of my eye, I would see something peek around the door frame. And it was always in your peripheral vision. Like
Mhm.
you would just see something kind of poke its head out. And then when you turn to look at it, it would shoot back and disappear. And so for a while, I was just kind of ignoring it, like, my, sights, my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'm not really seeing this. Started seeing some weird things. Like remember like one time I was filming the dog and I saw an orb floating around in the room that was caught on camera. And this wasn't like a dust particle. This was like a blatant orb that we saw. Another time I remember seeing an orb shoot through my living room one time, just sitting on the couch, and it went right out the window. And I'm like, what the
Well,
hell is that? But it started happening so much that I actually brought it up to my wife at the time, and I told her, I said, "Hey, you're probably gonna think I'm crazy, but I swear to God, I'm seeing what looks like something peeking around the door in my peripheral vision, like a dark shadow person." And her eyes got real big. She looked right at me and she goes, "Oh my God, I've been seeing that same thing too." So
hmm,
she told me that when she was working out in the other bedroom, that she would see the same thing. So
okay.
it was very, it was nothing traumatic happened in the get-go, but we started going through a divorce and it got
Mm,
pretty nasty.
okay.
Um, Eventually, like I remember times, like I can't really remember if this is before we started our divorce, but I remember laying in bed and I would get this sense of dread, and it's going to sound kind of corny, but I would look over and my closet would be as black as black. It'd be
Mhm.
like a void. And we're not talking about like I got the lights off, I'm in bed, black normal. I'm talking about as black can possibly get.
Yeah.
Complete void in the closet. And I would look over and I would swear I could feel a presence. And it would get to the point of where it was so overwhelming that I would have to get up and like close the closet door because it was bothering me. And this is something that never worried about, the boogeyman in the closet, so to speak.
Right.
Um, but then it became it started getting more active.
Hmm.
There was one time I woke up from a dead sleep and I look up, I'm laying in bed and I see hovering above me a dark shadow. It wasn't in the shape of a human being. It was just like a jagged kind of dark cloud. That's the only way I could, a mist,
Yeah.
so to speak,
Yep.
hovering right above me in the bed. And when you see something like that, you don't really go into shock because your brain goes into protection mode, and your brain is trying to go, "You didn't see that," or that was a figment of your imagination. I don't have an active imagination where I'm seeing things and getting freaked out, but I see this, and I just literally go, "Okay." Uh, I didn't even know how to even deal with it. It didn't really freak me out. Like I said, my brain just kind of went into straight protection mode, and I tried to go back to sleep.
Sure.
Another time, um, and I told this to my wife at time, and I told her, I said, "Yeah, I woke up last night and I saw this shadow floating above the bed." And she goes, "You're not going to believe this, but the other day she got up one morning, went to the bathroom, and when she came back to the bed, it's probably 3 or 4 in the morning, when she was walking back towards the bed, she saw a dark shadow silhouette on my side of the bed, like standing right beside me. I never
Mhm.
saw it. She saw it. I believe her because she's never said that ever again, or never said she wasn't a type person who would make up stuff like that.
Yeah.
Time goes by. In our divorce, things got really nasty. I was in a separate bedroom. I've told this story before, so people probably heard this plenty of times, but I got to share it just for the sake of you. I was laying in bed. I felt something jump up on the bed. It felt like one of my dogs jumped on the bed.
Mhm.
Didn't really freak me out. I'm a light sleeper, but I felt this thing jump up on the bed. It felt like an animal. It ran right up to me, and it felt just like a dog would or an animal would running across the bed. And again, I'm thinking it's just my dog. This thing came up to me at a high speed on the bed. It approached me, and then all of a sudden, I had this gut punch.
Oh,
Not like I really physically felt like a hand hit me, but it was something that literally went inside of me energetically and knocked the air out of me. I could not breathe. I'm laying there, and on top of that, I was completely paralyzed. I could not move. I felt like I had a 600-pound beanbag on my body that gave my whole body this electric kind of feel. And I was completely paralyzed, could not move, and instinctively I tried to utter the words out, God help me. It wasn't something that I was trying to think of. It was an instinctual, just this is what came out of me.
yeah.
And I repeated, God help me. And then when I said that, it lifted off of me. I popped up out of bed. I didn't know how to process what just happened to me. It was very real. I've never had dreams or nightmares that are very vivid. Matter of fact, I don't really dream that much, and my dreams that I do have, they're kind of lame. They're not really that exciting. But this was extremely physical. My eyes were open when I was paralyzed. But again, when I experienced this, I didn't know how to process it, and my
Right.
brain just went into safety mode and tried to make sense out of it. And all these years I've been trying to understand it, but I do know that what I saw with my own eyes, and there was shadow entities or a shadow entity in our apartment. And ever since then, I've always wondered, what are these things? And now we have Mike Ricksecker here. So Mike is going to explain exactly what shadow entities are.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you that they can be an assortment of different things. There's no one answer. As you know, without you provide a lot of information, which is great. It sounds like you were probably dealing with several different things there. I'd have to learn a little bit more about the apartment area, and things like that. Because they can be shadow beings. They can be a human spirit that is not fully manifested as an apparition. They can be an interdimensional being. They can be a extraterrestrial. They can be actually a type of light being that you don't see correctly. Astral projections, all these different things that they can possibly be. It's the way that our eyes are perceiving light.
Right.
You seeing it out of the corner of your eye, out of your periphery. Well, that's averted vision. We actually see more light out of the corner of our eyes than we do straight on because of the way the rods and cones work within our eyes. So if you see something out of the corner of your eye and you turn and look and it seems like it disappeared, it actually probably didn't disappear. It's probably still there.
That's so
Unfortunately.
creepy.
Yeah. And then, people want to, okay, what do they want? What are they up to? And really, it's an individual basis. It's per each being or entity has their own agenda because we're dealing with different things here. So yeah, it sounds like that. At least that last one that you dealt with was quite nefarious in nature. It sounded
Yeah.
almost creature-like. So it sounded different than some of the other ones that were there in the house that were
Yeah.
kind of more watching, observing, might have just been curious about you. And there's nothing really nefarious about that. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, okay, I'm wondering if there's something about, maybe that particular apartment or something with the land, something is going on there in at least, those rooms, that apartment. We don't know what people may have done in that apartment beforehand, or if there's
Yeah.
something there going on with the land. I mean, maybe built on some native sacred land or something like that. We don't know.
Yeah.
That could have really created like a highway for that type of supernatural activity to happen. So you could have different beings coming in and out. Some that could just be like the one that I had when I was young was actually I did a hypnotic regression to find out more about it. We were actually able to channel that being, which was really
Wow.
fascinating. And long story short, because I know we don't have a lot of time here left, but we had discovered that this was actually a being from another dimension. And what was really fascinating about that is the hypnotherapist had asked, okay, the question, are you, or where are you from? And they answered another space. And so the hypnotherapist, Ariana, answered back, well, you mean like another dimension? And the response was, well, you might call it another dimension, but really it's another space.
Yeah.
And the whole thing with that was it was there to watch and observe and study humanity, within, this other, dimension. They were really, for our sake, they were really coming from another dimension and studying us. And it was kind of like a sign to my room that particular night. It didn't realize that I could see it at first.
Oh,
And
wow.
so when it realized that it was scaring me that I could actually see it, the whole thing with the crossing my arms across my body was giving me like a self hug, and it got out of there so that it would stop scaring me. So a very, very different perspective that. So some of these are just, they're coming in and out of our plane of existence. And a lot of them are just kind of like watching, observing. That could even be, it could have even been like maybe somehow your apartment there got set up as almost like a train depot and things are going in and out.
Yeah.
Some of these could be like, oh, what's going on? Who are these
Right.
people? What's going on over there? But then, yeah, you had the nasty one there. And
I guess you could call it sleep paralysis. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I've never had
yeah.
sleep paralysis before. It was that one-off incident where I felt it and then I was paralyzed. I don't know if that's technically sleep paralysis.
That is. So yeah, sleep paralysis, and that's a real biological phenomenon. And what is interesting there is you had several shadow experiences there without the sleep paralysis, but you had one that did.
Yeah. And I've never
and-
had any sleep paralysis prior
Right.
to that incident, and I have not experienced that since.
Mhm. Yeah. It's a real biological phenomenon. It is the basically our body is paralyzing us so that we don't act out our dreams while we sleep. Sometimes it doesn't work. We accidentally kick our partner, but a lot of times it does. And sometimes when we wake up, we are still experiencing that paralysis. And I've actually had it in the reverse way with sleep paralysis and never saw shadows. And a lot of people have the sleep paralysis and not see shadows and that sort of thing. And what's going on when people like wake up, have the sleep paralysis, see the shadow? It's really two different types of phenomena going on at the same time. So you felt the presence of that other being in your room, and we each have a toroidal field of energy that surrounds us, that expands out several feet. And so when somebody or even an animal or something comes into you feel that energy.
Yeah.
And I always tell this story with my youngest son Cameron. When he was little, he would come into the bedroom if he had like a bad dream or needed to use the bathroom, whatever it was, and instead of like tapping you on the shoulder, he would just stand there and stare and not say a thing. You'd suddenly wake up like, oh my gosh, Cameron, what are you doing? It's kind of creepy.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd say what he needed, and it's like, okay, well, tap me on the shoulder next time. But but what was it that woke me up? It was I felt his presence standing next to me, and so when this happened, so you felt the presence of that thing
Oh,
in
yeah.
the room
You
at
could-
the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, which woke you up. Your body was still in a state of paralysis, which is a very natural thing. But then this thing, of course, very severely interacted with you.
Yeah. I mean, the gut punch was, like
Yeah,
if
that's bad.
when you're a kid and you fall off your bike and you get the air knocked out of you. I mean,
Mhm.
that's exactly
That's
what
what it
happened.
was. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could not physically breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you had a mix of different things going on there. It's if if you still live there, I'd be like, man, I got to check this
No.
place out and see what's
No.
going on. But
No.
yeah,
For
it
people
sounds like you had a lot of stuff moving in and out there. Yeah.
Yeah, for people experiencing that, what do you think like the best like plan of action is to do with like dealing with it?
Yeah. So first step would be to investigate it out, try to figure out what in the world that you actually have going on there, since these are different beings. There's no one answer to it. So
Sure.
I've been on more nefarious cases. I've been on others where it's like, well, yeah, this thing just kind of appears in the doorway sometimes and then goes away and it's not doing anything. So it's like,
So
okay,
weird about the doorway connection. I've heard that so much.
yeah, doorway or closet. But a lot of times they'll walk down the hall too, or they'll walk across the kitchen. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of different scenarios here. So it then becomes, okay, what do you want to actually try to do about it? Do you want to get rid of, if it's not doing anything, do you want to try to do something about that? And so then it comes,
especially if it's gut punching you, you definitely
yeah,
wanna
that's a
do
bad one.
something about
Yeah.
it.
And the episode that we filmed for The Haunted years ago, that was a red-eyed shadow entity, and we actually did a cleansing of the house. And kind of the same thing, gut punch, right as we're doing the cleansing. And she had fallen to the floor during that. And I got a EVP right there. I had my audio recorder going, and they said die, and boom, punched her in the gut.
Wow.
Jeez. So that was a bad situation.
I'd say.
So yeah. So you can do a cleansing of the home, and we had done that there, and they didn't experience anything after that. That always comes down, people will ask them, okay, so what type of cleansing do you want to do? And it's like, well, I think when it comes to those type of cleansings, it's really the intention. Again, there's no one surefire method. So, for instance, if I have a very religious, Christian, I don't know, Bible beating family that I'm dealing with, I probably don't want to recommend a Native American shamanic cleansing for the home, and vice versa, right? Because for it to take, you need to have the belief that this is going to work. If we're doing some ceremony that might work for that culture just fine, but if we're doing that type of ceremony, you don't have that belief it's going to work, it's not going to work. So then it comes into, okay, learning more about the family or the people that are live there. So
when you say extraterrestrial, I mean, most people would think spiritual, demon, ghost, that kind of thing. But it's interesting because you hear a lot about that, where people would experience, people who've had abductions, that kind of thing, have experienced shadow entities. I've had some dramatic UFO encounters in the past. We don't have time for me to really get into that. But do you think that people who've had dramatic UFO encounters, does that correlate with shadow entity experiences?
Sometimes there are a lot of similarities between some of the reported encounters. So, again, each encounter is a bit different, but some of them, you hear almost a similar type story, like the waking up in the middle of the night kind, and you're seeing this being standing there. Some people will say it was a shadow. Some people will say it was, their Aunt Tilly, and some people will say it was an extraterrestrial. So it's but there's a lot of similarities between, not all, but some of the accounts like that. So I think in a lot of these, not all. That's what I try to stress here. It's not all. Everybody want, black and white, clear as crystal answer, and you're just not going to get that. But everything to me does come down to, if you look at the kind of the base structure of our universe, it's energy, resonance, frequency, vibration. And I believe in a lot of these cases, especially somebody who has experienced something often, if you're having a lot of UFO encounters, if you're having a lot of shadow people encounters, or seeing a lot of orbs, that sort of thing, your personal resonance is becoming in tune to those other energies and those other frequencies. So when something like that enters into the room, your personal resonance and frequency, which it fluctuates between like 9-16 hertz, it kind of tunes into that frequency, and you get a better glimpse of it than somebody else that might be standing right next to you.
Gotcha. We got a few minutes left. I just want to, real quick, if people, I'm sure, we're not the only people who've experienced this. Do you have any literature on that? Have you written any books about shadow people? I've seen your shows about it. What if someone wanted to read some of your work on shadow entities? What book do you have for that?
Yeah, A Walk in the Shadows: A Complete Guide to Shadow People.
Perfect.
That came out a couple of years ago. Yeah,
I'm gonna download that tonight. Do you have Audible?
It's on Audible too. Yeah,
perfect.
My last three books are all on Audible.
Awesome. I have ADD. I'm a terrible reader, but I'm a great listener.
Also, and I read it too. So,
that's awesome. So if with there are a few minutes left, could we get into your new book, which is
Travels Through Time?
That's right. Let's dive into it real quick. What's that book
gosh.
about? I know
that is not a quick topic.
I know.
But okay, so it gets in stack time theory. So it's basically the idea that all time is concurrent. It doesn't really exist. What we describe as time is really our experience, our consciousness in the fourth dimension. Time is a human concept used to describe our reality, keep track of when to plant the crops and when the seasons change, when to report to work at the right moment, that sort of thing. Time, if you look at it from the other dimensions, because our theoretical physics has so far shown that we have up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions. So if we're in the fourth dimension, and we see, perceive as a whole every other dimension below us, like a three-dimensional object, like this water bottle and everything else that's around us. Those other dimensions above us, 5, 6, 7, 8 on upward, would perceive our dimension of time as a whole, one whole object, everything right there. So if everything is there, if everything is concurrent, that means that everything, take where you're sitting right now, that has happened, is happening, and will happen, all right there. Every moment stacked up like a photo in a very, very large stack of photographs. So every once in a while, there will become a moment in which two of those photos in the stack, two of those moments in the stack will resonate at the same frequency for just a moment, and we'll get a glimpse of another. So some of these different hauntings, apparitions, things like that may actually be what we would call a time slip, and we're actually interacting with another moment in time, whether it's the past or the future. Yeah. And so, the book has several examples of that, real world examples that have actually occurred. People probably are familiar with like the Versailles time slip, but I have several other examples in there. I think a lot of these quote unquote doppelganger cases are actually examples of time slips. And I get into a lot of different topics in your dreams and premonitions. I get into different paradoxes and how those work, the Mandela effect. The way the book reads, and this is what I try to say about it, is there's a lot of science in there without getting too sciencey. There's a lot of metaphysics in there without getting too metaphysical. But at its heart, it's really a philosophy book.
Nice.
Awesome.
I like that.
Well, people check it out. That's for sure. Well, Mike,
really
thank you so much for joining us. You've been awesome, man. Keep up the great work. Look forward to following your new ventures and things you keep putting out. And I'm definitely going to check out the Shadow Entity book tonight. So finally got a little bit of answers on that. So
yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on tonight. It was a very good conversation.
Absolutely.
And always happy to talk about these topics.
Appreciate it, brother. All right. Well, I think that's gonna do it for us tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see. Oh, real quick before we do that, if people want to know more about Mr. Ricksecker, where should they go? My apologies.
Yeah, you go to my website, MikeRicksecker.com. You can find links to all my books there, my event schedule, everything that I'm showing up and appearing on, as well as like links to the Egypt tour. I also have ConnectedUniversePortal.com, which is my community site, and all kinds of information, videos, and material out there as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's going to officially wrap it up for us tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you here next time.